Now, tomorrow, I'm going to go talk to Rick Warren
Yes.
at the Saddleback Church. How did you get involved with them and other mega churches?
I have an old friend whose name is Bob BUFORD, who first came to me to consult about his business. He built one of the successful TV station chains. And Bob came to me, make it 20-odd years ago, about his business. And in the course of talking to each other, we discovered that we had a common interest in the megachurches. And he had the idea of starting an organization to help the megachurches learn how to manage themselves. Traditionally, those phenomena an old American tradition of the charismatic pastor who builds the church and then it collapses because he can't manage it, and it certainly collapses when he goes. And Bob BUFORD had the idea, not mine, called Leadership Network, to bring together those people and so that they can pool their experiences and learn how to build a successful and a lasting organization, and incidentally realize that their results are by no means the same. See, if you talk to Rick Warren tomorrow, Rick has a very clear idea of what he considers results, and the first of the best known, most publicized of these mega churches, Bill Hybels' church, which you may have heard. Bill Hybels has a totally different idea, and it looks as if they did the same thing, and we helped them understand the idea and organize for it. And also them, maybe for the first time, not for the first time, not true, but for the first time since the late 18th century, these new religious organizations may actually perpetuate themselves. And if I may go back, both Bob BUFORD and I, who had not known each other, had independently reached the conclusion that, yes, the old denominations are dying or going downhill, but here those mega churches are a new major, maybe the fourth great religious revival in the history of the U.S. And they are not denominational in terms of the old denomination, they are pastoral, and they are right for the new demographics, for the emergence of an educated, professional, laity, where the old denominations basically own, whether they know it or not, assume that the pastor or the priest is the only person in the congregation who can read or write. So that one of the things we had to teach them is how to make, well, we had, not true, one of the things we had to learn from the successful ones and then teach is how to bring in the congregation as a partner, and how basically that these churches are very different, not only in the mega churches are an old American phenomenon, but they're very different in their relationship between the small professional staff, the pastor, and the very large volunteer job. And whether Rick will say that tomorrow, but basically Rick considers everybody who has been at Saddlebrook more than once or two Sundays to be a fellow executive. And so does Bill HYBELS, and so does Jim Fleming in Richmond. Very different people, very different definition of what their results are. Jim Fleming's result was not only to keep the first Baptist church in America alive, but to create the first truly multiracial big church, and he has succeeded. That Rick Warren couldn't care less, or HYBELS, though they are, and there's that wonderful black Bishop Blake here in Los Angeles, who built the largest, I think I don't even know what denomination it is. It's entirely black. That is the church, 18,000 or 22,000 members now of the black professional middle class, of the new phenomenon. And they are not congregation, they are members. And so Bob and I saw the new phenomenon, and Bob was willing. He had the money and the time. He was withdrawing from business more and more. He finally sold it a few years ago, and he had the time and the money, and I worked with him on it. He did most of the work, and I did most of I was the cheerleader. I'm good as a cheerleader.
Now, at the Saddleback Church, Rick Warren, what kind of advice, what kinds of, questions did he have for you? And what?
I never worked with Rick.
Oh.
No. The way we worked in Leadership Network was we had 4 or 5 medium-sized conferences, no more than 50 people, all of them leaders of successful megachurches, exchanging information, with my pretty much leading those 3 days. And that's how I worked with them. I have not worked directly with any megachurch. Note, in that case, quite intentionally. The format, the basic idea was that these people learn from each other to bring out what works, so that they could learn from each other. We were not trying to be teachers or... Yes, Leadership Network did a lot of teaching of young pastors and so on, but that's not what I had anything to do with. The idea was these people get their experiences, their challenges, their problems together so that they can learn from each other. My job was to bring it out, to pull it together, to package it, and to I don't know what Rick is going to tell you, but the ones because I'm not in that close a touch, but my job, I think, where I made the impact was that I said, this is what we learned, and this is what and let me say, in some areas it took a long time before they became receptive. It's only the last few years that they become receptive to the idea that if they do not prepare for succession, their enterprise will collapse with them. And they go about it very differently. But most of them these are all superstars. And superstars do not, don't believe that they're immortal.
Now, you said when you met Bob Buford, you found that you were both interested in megachurches. How did you get interested in the megachurches?
Because I looked out the window. There was that phenomenon, period. And I'm curious.
But not from a religious...
Huh?
I mean, you were not interested from a personal religious point of view? Or?
I'm not a born-again Christian, no. I've been going to church, and I've been tithing all my life, but I do not claim to be. And the best thing I wrote was an essay on a great religious thinker. I said, if you read one thing of mine, read my essay on Kierkegaard. The best, what?
I have.
The best thing I ever wrote, easily. But it's also the only thing I ever wrote about religion. I taught religion in Bennington. I taught American history, government, and religion. One seminar in every other term for a couple of years, 5 years. But anyhow, for which I really wrote that Kierkegaard essay, or out of which that Kierkegaard essay came. It was written after I'd stopped teaching at Bennington, or just when it was given in Bennington, but in my last year, in 49, when I had stopped teaching, there's this talk. But, or 48, just when I was about ready to stop teaching there. But, no, my interest in the megachurches was as a social phenomenon, as the that I talked about it yesterday. My old and abiding interest in community. I saw them creating community for these young, educated, successful professionals who in 9 cases out of 10 were rootless and came out of the small town or the farm or the working class, were now in the big city and very successful in their work and had no community, and also while the job paid well, and they loved it, it did not, again and again you hear them say, but I work for the XYZ company, or I work for the city of Cincinnati, and I can't figure out what we are trying to do. They need a place where this can, but they also feel that they have no responsibility. They're so far away from results. And this is the need or the opportunity which a megachurch exploits. And I saw it as a social phenomenon, but also the first of them are marketing successes. Very typical is the story of Bill Hybels in Willow Creek, how he got into it, who's no degree in theology or divinity, but wanted to be a pastor, and he and his wife, in that Chicago excerpt, just went from door to door and said, "Do you know the story?"
Well, I taped him at one of the Drucker Foundation.
Well, then you know that story, how he knocked at every door and said, "Do you attend the church?" And if that person said yes, Hybels said, "Thank you," and went to the next one. And if the person said no, Hybels said, "Why don't you?" and learned that this is market research. What do people expect? And then he built a church to satisfy these expectations. And that is, and he claims that he learns it out of my books.
Now, what about Rick Warren's story?
Rick Warren's story, I don't know. But Rick Warren is very different. Rick Warren is basically, his results are born people whose lives have been totally changed.